Never enough, never enough, never enough for me, for me, for me.
Welcome to the BEAU Show. Well, were they woke enough, or is it never enough? The 2021 Oscars put on a very different type of display at a time when award shows have been seeing their worst ratings in history. I made this point in a recent episode that award shows have become too long, too profane, too boring, and too political, which ends up turning off most viewers. This show, however, was a bit of an outlier. It was indeed long, well over 3 hours, and they even tried to shorten it by having the Best Song nominees perform in the pre-broadcast, which I actually found rather entertaining. The pre-show also had an epidemiologist, Dr. Anne Remoyne, talk about how safe they had been with precautions to pull off this year's Oscars. She ebulliently talked about the mass amount of testing and social distancing and masks that were worn, yet she herself delivered her speech without one on. She also gave a passionate charge for everyone to get vaccinated, even at a time when the virus has broken through a number of vaccinated people. Now, regardless of where you stand on the vaccine, it should be a voluntary choice and not a virtue signal. But right at the outset, they made a mistake. They said that they followed all CDC guidelines and everyone was vaxxed. Well, if you look at the CDC website, and here it is, here are the guidelines. It says this: after you've been fully vaccinated against COVID-19, you should keep taking precautions, like wearing a mask, staying 6 feet apart from others, and avoiding crowds in poorly ventilated spaces in public places until we know more. Well, as far as I could tell, I saw very few masks, close quarters among nominees, and the venue was indoors, so enough with the virtue. Now, on to the ceremony itself. Famed director Steven Soderbergh of films such as Traffic and Ocean's 11 directed this telecast, and he put his own signature style on it, making the broadcast look like an actual film, especially with some of the long walks that we saw in opening credits. Regina King took a yeoman's walk to get to Union Station in LA for a very intimate setting, and then in her opening remarks said this:
"We are mourning the loss of so many, and I have to be honest, if things had gone differently this past week in Minneapolis, I might have traded in my heels for marching boots." Now, I know that a lot of you people at home want to reach for your remote when you feel like Hollywood is preaching to you, but as a mother of a black son, I know the fear that so many live with, and no amount of fame or fortune changes that.
Well, she's right. People want to reach for that remote right away at the top of the show. Economic privilege is a very real thing, and those who have it generally get an easier tack in life. But one thing is certain: if you don't break the law, you have probably about a 99.99% chance of not being placed in a situation where police brutality will ever be a problem for you. If you comply, your chances are probably even better. There's no need to live in fear if you're a law-abiding citizen. Now, Best Supporting Actor, a very early award, was given to Daniel Kaluuya for Judas and the Black Messiah. 3 out of the 5 nominees in that category were black, and they made a point to mention the words diversity and inclusivity, of course. Kaluuya did say, "Thank you, God," at the beginning of his speech. And it's an ironic thing, because I feel like that's the one thing Hollywood doesn't really want you to say. Jesus as well. Mention diversity, social justice, inequality, and they'll leap to their feet. But thanking God, well, it's a little taboo. And it did happen a few times in the night, mostly from black winners. Jamaica Wilson, who was a co-winner for Best Hair and Makeup for Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, had a mixed message speech that both celebrated the grandfather who raised her and paved the way for her at such a tough time in civil rights. And then, at the end of it, she said she hoped for more black trans women to win future awards. This is where it kind of got weird, I think, because it almost sounds like it's a race to be the most diverse person ever, not based on merit at all. Now, a few bright spots to mention, too, in this telecast. Thomas Vinterberg had a very heartfelt acceptance speech for Best International Film.
We wanted to make a film that celebrates life, And 4 days into shooting, the impossible happened. An accident on a highway took my daughter away. Someone looking into a cell phone. And we miss her, and I love her. And, sorry. 2 months before we shot this movie, and 2 months before she died, she was in Africa. She sent me a letter, and she just read the script, and she was glowing with excitement. She loved this, and she felt seen by this, and she was supposed to be in this. And if anyone dares to believe that she's here with us somehow, you'll be able to see her clapping and cheering with us. We ended up making this movie for her, as her monument. So, Ida, this is a miracle that just happened. And you're a part of this miracle.
This really struck me as my father and I were in a head-on collision last September, and my dad unnecessarily perished at the hands of a driver on several illegal substances and no driver's license and no insurance. These are stories worth telling. They're from the heart. Questlove of The Roots, he was the music director for the broadcast, and I personally think that it actually made a huge impact. He was up there DJing and he spun some really great music for some of the intros and outros and acceptance speeches, ranging from James Brown to remixes of Johnny Cash's Walk the Line. It was a huge change from the usual boring orchestral music that no one really remembers. Just repeats ad nauseum. Another bright spot was the highlight on the Motion Picture Television Fund and the Lew Wasserman Center for Neurological Disorders, such as Alzheimer's, and that's in Los Angeles. As someone whose grandfather had Alzheimer's, this had a particular resonance with me and brings some heart to the broadcast. The way Soderbergh added a lot of, anecdotes and insights from people who work in the industry, I thought that was also kind of refreshing. Chloe Zhao, only the second woman to win an Oscar for Best Director for Nomadland, grew up in China and had this to say in her speech.
I have always found goodness in the people I met everywhere I went in the world. So this is for anyone who has the faith and the courage to hold on to the goodness in themselves and to hold on to the goodness in each other, no matter how difficult it is to do that. And this is for you. You inspire me to keep going.
I thought that was also a very refreshing take on what has perennially been an overly politicized award show. By contrast, Trayvon Free, who won the Oscar for Best Live Action Short, said this.
Today, the police will kill 3 people. And tomorrow, the police will kill 3 people. And the day after that, the police will kill 3 people because on average, the police in America every day kill 3 people, which amounts to about 1,000 people a year. And those people happen to disproportionately be black people. And, James Baldwin once said, the most despicable thing a person can be is indifferent to other people's pain. And so I just ask that you please not be indifferent. Please don't be indifferent to our pain.
Now, while I think his message of not being indifferent to pain is a noble one, the notion of police-related deaths is an interesting stat to just flash out there, especially when half of those killed are actually white. Over 95% are males between 20 and 40. So when you dice up the stats, people read them and hear them without proper context. And I think we can be logical about the situation without being indifferent to it. Perhaps maybe research why so many are male, why they are relatively young men, what careers they were in, what kind of families they come from, and how much mental illness was present. There were 774 murders in Chicago alone in 2020, according to the Chicago Sun-Times. That is just the city of Chicago by itself. So when you see Oscar speeches like this, proceed with caution. There are a minimum of 774 Chicagoans that can't be indifferent to pain either. By contrast, Yoo Jung-yoon's speech for winning Best Supporting Actress for the film Minari was another bright spot. Take a look.
I'd like to thank to my 2 boys who made me go out and work. So, beloved son, all and Nur, this is the result because mommy worked so hard.
See how refreshing that can be when someone celebrates hard work and family as opposed to getting political or quoting stats out of context? It was just a very real, authentic speech, which is how every speech should be. But Yoon is Korean and she considers herself unworthy of winning over the great Glenn Close. Her dose of humility is a rare moment for Hollywood, and her notion of gratitude rather than attitude is special. Speaking of Glenn Close, her impromptu knowledge about film music and recreation of debut dance was comedic gold. I thought this brought some real fun back to the Oscars. And check out this statement from score winner Jon Batiste.
Man, you know what's deep is that God gave us 12 notes. It's the same 12 notes Duke Ellington had, Bach had. It's the same 12, Nina Simone, and all the nominees. I just want to first point out that every gift is special. Every contribution with music that comes from the divine into the instruments, into the film, into the minds and hearts and souls of every person who hears it, the stories that happen when you listen to it and watch it, and the stories you share, the moments you create, the memories you make. Man, it's just so incredibly special. And I just want to first recognize the nominees and say that I'm speaking for all of us, we are incredibly humbled and grateful to the Academy for this recognition, and I'm just thankful to God for those 12 notes, man. That's so dope. Thank you to my parents.
Once again, what a refreshing take of humility. And notice the tepid golf clap he got, that's kind of sad. But what I think was the greatest speech of the night, by far, was the humanitarian award given to Tyler Perry. Here's a bit of that speech.
My mother taught me to refuse hate. She taught me to refuse blanket judgment. And in this time, and with all of the internet and social media and algorithms and everything that wants us to think a certain way, the 24-hour news cycle, it is my hope that all of us would teach our kids, and not only to remember, just refuse hate. Don't hate anybody. I refuse to hate someone because they are Mexican or because they are black or white or LGBTQ. I refuse to hate someone because they are a police officer. I refuse to hate someone because they are Asian. I would hope that we would refuse hate. And I want to take this Jean Hersholt Humanitarian Award and dedicate it to anyone who wants to stand in the middle, no matter what's around the walls, stand in the middle, because that's where healing happens. That's where conversation happens. That's where change happens. It happens in the middle. So anyone who wants to meet me in the middle, to refuse hate, to refuse blanket judgment, and to help lift someone's feet off the ground, this one is for you too. God bless you, and thank you, Academy. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Wow. We need more Tyler Perry. What a speech, and what a message. Perry's admonition to resist hate and resist blanket judgment is one we all can apply. And he even said he would refuse to hate police officers, which is such a far cry from what the left is saying right now. This notion of divide, 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 and make it based on race and class warfare and even law enforcement hatred, that keeps people from loving. It prevents the progress that Tyler is talking about because we have been instructed to hate each other, dividing us into groups. We need more Tyler Perrys and Jon Batiste and Yoo Jung-yoons. It teaches us where the real heart is. And yet, sadly, to my point, media had to instruct us how to feel about two white people, Frances McDormand and Anthony Hopkins, winning the final awards of the night for Best Actor and Actress. This is how Yahoo Entertainment put it. They say, wait a second. So just to be clear, the producers thought it would be a good idea to move the Best Actor category to the last slot of the night, rather than the usual and common sense Best Picture, and then watch the would-be sentimental ending flop, with the award not going to the late and highly favorited Chadwick Boseman. Instead, the statuette went to Anthony Hopkins? Anthony Hopkins, who wasn't even in attendance nor available by satellite? WTF? It was the most awful, enraging, anticlimactic end to an Academy Awards telecast we've ever seen. And the telecast was already pretty wretched to begin with. Hopkins was indeed excellent in The Father. But the failure to honor Boseman for a career-best performance was yet another bad look for the Oscars. We did not get the historic repeat of the SAG Awards where 4 actors of color swept for the first time ever. Yahoo did not point out that Anthony Hopkins is the oldest actor ever to win an Oscar at age 83, and also one of the most brilliant actors to walk the face of this earth. No, they were more concerned about the lack of diversity and the shock of the late Chadwick Boseman not winning the Best Actor award. Now, I watched Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, and it was good. It was okay. Boseman was very solid, but a far cry from his portrayal of James Brown in Get On Up, for which he did deserve an Oscar in my opinion. He was outstanding. But that's not good enough for Yahoo Entertainment and other wokies. And what was clearly a very diverse night, it's never enough. Remember that song from The Greatest Showman? And it is true that, perhaps producers and the directors assumed that Boseman might be winning this Oscar posthumously since he'd won every other award. So they switched up the order so that the last award could be maybe a sort of tribute. But instead, Hopkins, who wasn't even present, won, with Joaquin Phoenix kind of awkwardly closing the telecast. That was certainly an unexpected flop and anticlimactic. But the notion of Hopkins and McDormand being undeserving because they are white is still how some have perceived this. Take a look at this tweet, for instance. How can they say this? Yes, Boseman is a wonderful actor and meritorious of accolades, absolutely. But to say that the Oscars have no idea what they're doing, that's disrespectful to the other nominees, regardless of color. Furthermore, Hopkins plays a character with dementia, which is far too common in society right now. And that's a story worth telling. Hopkins even paid tribute to Boseman in his belated acceptance speech the following day. But to many out there, this ceremony wasn't woke enough, in spite of its clear diversity and even sometimes unnecessary politicized speeches. Most people out there do not want to hear that type of speech. They want to hear more Tyler Perry's, John Batiste's, Eugene Yoon's, and Thomas Vinterberg's, who showed gratitude, humor, and humility. Those speeches resonate, and they don't look out of touch. But for many, it's
never enough, never, never, never enough, never, never, never enough for me, for me, for me. For me.